Hello, good afternoon. In this video, I'm going to entitle it Point by Point Response to Michael Miano's quote, "Not so amusing," unquote. I'm responding to Michael Miano's video. I just watched it now. I seen he posted it yesterday. Didn't get around to it till today to view it. Sorry about the noise. They're working on the furnace room. But we'll try to get through this. I just watched it, gave some quotes and points in response, and so I'm just going off the cuff here. I don't know how long this is going to take, but we're going to try to get through this as quick as possible, but be as exhaustive as possible in refuting Michael. Now, first, Michael, right out of the gate, okay, Michael says, quote, "A team of what we're calling inconsistent anti-preterists," unquote. And he's talking about us who have put that website together, 11 of us, who've put that website together recently. And not even a minute in, barely a minute in to the video, Michael, he stumbles. He makes a major blunder in calling us inconsistent. And I've pointed this out on his podcast before, in his use of inconsistent and full preterist usage of inconsistent, because it does them more damage than it does them good. So barely a minute in, and he calls us inconsistent. First, I would like to say about the site, within 4 days, 3 or 4 days, from January 29th to February 3rd or 4th, we had over 1,000 views. That's why Michael and a lot of them are responding to our website. 1,000 views within 3 or 4 days. A lot of people are taking notice. And so, of course, they're naturally going to lash out and respond. So, a team of what we're calling inconsistent anti-preterists. Now, I did a video on this in response to Michael Miano on consistency. Consistency killed the cat, I like to say. Consistency killed the cat. And what do I mean by that? I mean that look at movements that wanted to be ultra consistent. Okay? Look at these movements that wanted to be ultra consistent. Calvinism turned into hyper-Calvinism. They wanted to be totally consistent to the point. And I raised this on Michael's podcast when I was on there, and I'm going to put the link to Michael's video that I'm responding to and that podcast, because you'll have a real good education listening to that podcast of the heresy that Michael's promoting. But that we have hyper-Calvinism, and they have taken it centuries ago, and even today there's still hyper-Calvinism to the point that we don't even need to preach the gospel, that God is... It's just fatalistic. Everything will just happen. They ignore that it's the proclamation of the gospel where faith is worked in the hearts of men. And so they ignore that. They want to be consistent Calvinists. What do we have with dispensationalism? We have hyper-dispensationalism, or Bulgerism it's sometimes called, or mid-acts dispensationalism, where they want to be so consistent that they say we just go by 7 of Paul's prison epistles, throw out the rest of the Bible. They're like Marcion. It's like raising up Marcion's old heresy. They want to go just by Paul, 7 letters. All the rest of the Bible isn't for us, just Paul's prison epistles. Some would start the church in Acts chapter 13 when Paul preached his first message in Antioch. Or Acts 9, at his conversion, some in Antioch, chapter 13, or some even later in chapter 28. They don't believe the church started in Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. They believe Jesus taught to the Jews. Paul is our apostle, they say. And they would say Peter, James, and the boys, is how they put it, preached justification by works, faith and works. Paul preached a different gospel wars. I studied dispensationalism and hyper-dispensationalism and interacted with them over the years. And so this is consistency. This is where consistency leads to. Now we have preterism, which at one time we have to qualify it now, and we're going to get into that in a minute when he gets derogatory with the phrase partial preterism, and I'm going to explain why that is. We have to use the phrase partial preterism, why we have to qualify it. But consistency led to hyperpreterism. Partial preterism wasn't good enough, so Max King comes along, 1971. My parents are older than the full preterist movement. My mother is. She's still alive. She's older than the full preterist movement. It's amazing. Don's older than the movement. We have partial preterism taken to such an extreme where we had the Tyler, Texas crew in the 80s, late 80s. Banson, or not really so much Banson, but when it comes to eschatology, Gentry, DeMar, Shilton, guys like that, coming in the late 80s, partial preterism having a very big resurgence to the point where dispensationalism had to respond. Thomas Ice getting Tim LaHaye to help back the Pre-Trib Rapture Center in 1990 because of Gentry and Banson's book House Divided in 89, refuting Thomas Ice. And so we have partial preterism, which sees major fulfillment, but now we have consistent preterism or hyperpreterism, where it's so consistent in its thinking that it's heretical, not only in eschatology, but it leaks poison and feces, rubbish into other areas of theology. Protology, study of Genesis, creation. Christology, Jesus. Docetism, Jesus doesn't have a physical body now. The hypostatic union, the God-man is destroyed. Soteriology, they're all messed up there. We can go on and on. Ecclesiology, well, where's the church today? They don't have any ecclesiology, full preterists. And so consistency killed the cat, Michael. Consistency killed the cat. That's just point number one. And then he says, quote, some use the term partial preterism. We have to use this, and as I stated on the podcast, Michael, we have to use the term partial preterism. We have to qualify it now, because before it was preterism. There was moderate preterism, and then there was more fuller, robust partial preterism. There was preterism. Then after King came along and hyperpreterism came, we had to qualify it. You're the new kids on the block. We had it first, preterism. You came up the full preterism with an extreme form, an ultra hyper form, then we have to qualify it because of your heresy, to just distinguish orthodoxy from heresy and heterodoxy. That is why partial preterism. So you can laugh and mock all you want, saying it's partial futurism. This is Christianity. Quote, evening musings. This goes against the respect of our elders, men and women of God, who have been teachers for years. And he's speaking particularly of Don K. Preston. The problem is, Michael, Don K. Preston is not even a Christian, as I've told him at different times. And you're not even a Christian, I would say. People are going to say, oh, that's harsh because they have a different view of end times. Well, no. I made the point before. The Mormons come to your door. Every branch of their theology is non-Christian, just like full preterists. Every branch of their theology, not just eschatology, is messed up because of their eschatology. If every branch of your theology is affected, and you use Christian lingo and terms, but redefine those terms, like the Mormons do and the Watchtower do, the Jehovah's Witnesses, when they come to your door, if they use different lingo, the Mormons, the same lingo with different meanings behind that lingo, and yet they have totally different theology and branches of theology than Christians, and all Christians, Catholic, Protestant, Evangelical, that agree that the Mormons are not Christian, what makes you and Don Preston a Christian? Because you're doing the same thing. Your other areas of theology are completely messed up. They're non-Christian, they're unorthodox. Christology, so on and so forth, they're unorthodox. And you use Christian lingo, atonement, so on and so forth, but have very different New Covenant age, but very different meanings. So I'll stick by what I said before to Don. He's not a Christian. By definition. Not by emotion, by definition. By theological definition. This cannot be refuted. So, do we respect our elders, or do we point out heresy, as Paul told Timothy, the elder at the overseer, the elder at Ephesus? Point out heresy. Don't put up with it. Don't put up with it at all. He said, warn that heretic twice, and that's it. Give him over to Satan. Then he might be saved. So Don's not even a Christian. Those that hold the covenant eschatology, most of them, I would say, are not. It's not possible when you redefine every branch of theology, and your definitions are not Christian definitions of the terms. Quote, pushing implications instead of having a good foundation. Well, he says we're pushing implications. We're dealing with implications on the site, hoperesurrected.com. Check it out, 11 contributors. 1,000 hits in 4 days, or first 4 days. We're not just showing the implications, as I did the introduction to the site, a video. The site is dedicated to refuting full preterism in general, the resurrection, judgments, so on and so forth, but also the implications of full preterism in particular. Now, Michael doesn't like dealing with implications, as most don't. Most full preterists don't. That's why he says we need to lay a good foundation. Well, Michael, you're still working on justification, the heart of the gospel. And you being a pastor, maybe you should have laid that foundation, as Hebrews 6 says, the milk, these type of doctrines. This is the milk. Maybe you should have laid that foundation years ago before immersing yourself in Dr. Don K. Preston and his works. Maybe you should have got that foundation of justification, which you admitted you do not understand recently. And I have the quote, of course, in our conversations with David Gates. So maybe you should have laid the foundation. Maybe the full preterists should lay the foundation. Get off the milk and get into the meat. I mean, you can't even get the person of Jesus right, or the gospel, the person and work of Christ. And he says we shouldn't be on the internet as much. He's talking about 11 people. Half of them he probably doesn't know. How does Michael know what we do? How does he know? Our goal is Christianity 101. Introduce Christianity 101 to people. Those affected by full preterism, those on the fence, those that have heard of it. A lot of us are ex-full preterists that are contributing, but not all. Our goal is, I said, even if one person, it gets their wheels spinning. Gets the wheels spinning up there, gets them thinking on a text or an issue, that